Hi all, a warm welcome to everyone. Today, this session is going to be about covering what is Azure, what are the main data ingestion tools in Azure Data Factory, with some SQL best practices if we can get that covered today. Moving on to the introduction and agenda, let me first introduce myself. I'm Agnes. I'm a Microsoft and Databricks certified Azure data engineer, working in the Azure space for close to 6 years now. I am a full-time solution lead working in a product-based company using Azure and Databricks in my day-to-day working to build efficient and scalable production deployable data pipelines. My total experience is close to 11 years in the IT sector, and I am interested in sharing my learnings with all of you. So the purpose of this demo is to primarily focus on Azure Data Factory, which is a data ingestion tool in Azure, and we will also try to cover some SQL coding as well. Let's start with the Azure Data Factory overview. Just to give a brief introduction, what is Azure? Azure is the cloud-based platform offering from Microsoft. Azure Cloud is being used by multiple companies across the world today. They are one of the leading cloud providers in which all data can be hosted online on cloud using the Azure platform. Today we're going to cover Azure Data Factory, which is one of the main key components of a data engineer's role in Azure today. Azure Data Factory is a data ingestion tool. What it essentially means is to be able to pull data from anywhere and host it in the cloud. Host it in the cloud in a variety of destinations. Like we can load data into a storage container, which is like a small folder if you're using Windows. So that's like creating folders online in Azure, right? So either we can put data in storage containers, we can put data into SQL databases, we could host data into a variety of other different destinations within cloud. So the destination is called as sink, and where do I pull the data from? That is my source. So we could be leveraging the features of Azure Data Factory to pull data from almost anywhere. We could be pulling it off the internet, we could be connecting to different data providers like SAP, we could be connecting to ERP systems and a lot of other different sources and things. So Azure Data Factory is the most modernized tool available in Azure today, which allows us to connect to different sources and to be able to pull the data and put it in a cloud platform like Azure. And we can ingest any format of data. It could be a video, it could be audio, it could be files, it could be a SQL table, it could be JSON structures, it could be Parquet files. So learning ADF enables any engineer to be able to connect to any particular data source. It could be a web API and transform the data on the go. It's not only about ingesting, we also get to transform the data and store it in a format that we like, right? Using Databricks as transformation tools, but ADF itself offers multiple transformation opportunities as well. We'll go through them in the demo. At the crux of it, that is what the Azure Data Factory is all about. It's about efficient data transformation and movement, orchestration. So this whole pulling the data and putting it into ADF could be orchestrated, could be scheduled, it could be something that you just set up once, it just runs every day automatically at any timing that you want, right? So, and a host of other bunch of features which ADF provides. We could go through them today. Yeah, moving on to the demo, I will open up the Azure Data Factory. Before that, let me just this is the Azure platform, Microsoft Azure. Once you log in, this is what the platform would look like. I have already created one instance of my data factory, which is what you see over here. It is called ADF Learning. But creating a data factory and deploying it just takes a couple of minutes. I've already created my one instance of my Learning Studio. Let me open it. So this is how I launched the studio. Yeah, once you're in, this is what the page looks like. This is me logged in using, I've registered into Azure and I've created an account. I've registered into the Azure portal and I have created and I'm logged in into one instance of a data factory. Now what you go here, what you see on the left here is the main navigation windows of Azure. Here at the home button we have different options like ingest, orchestrate, transform, configure. So these are some options which are ready-madely available for any new users to just pick up, ingest, orchestrate and transform data. We would like to author. So in this demo we're going to create a real pipeline which is going to pull data from a real storage container and host it into a SQL DB. So we're just going to get started with the basics here, and the goal is to pick up the concepts and the terminologies quickly to have a basic understanding of what ADF is about. Okay, so this pipeline is one of the most common words in Azure Data Factory. A pipeline is simply like it's like a pipeline connecting a source and a sink. The source being where we're going to pull the data from, and the sink being where we're going to push the data, right? So if I'm going to create a pipeline here, so I'm just going to create a new pipeline. And within a pipeline, once you create a pipeline, let me just name this as a source to ADLS, source to ADLS to SQL DB. Yeah, so that's going to be the name of my pipeline. This is a pipeline in construction, which is why you will see the black dot here. Once we have created the pipeline and we have tested the pipeline and we are making sure everything is running, we could publish it. And publishing means saving that pipeline to Azure, meaning if you launch the Data Factory again tomorrow, you will still find the pipeline there, right? So once you give a name to your pipeline, you will see that Azure provides multiple activities which could be used anywhere in your pipeline, right? So if you want a Databricks integration, what is Databricks? Databricks is a more of a transformation tool that can be integrated with ADF. For example, if we're pulling a CSV data, we're pulling a CSV file from one place and we're storing it into Azure, and then I could call a notebook which has a bunch of code to transform the data in that I'm ingesting through the Azure Data Factory. So the notebook can be called or triggered in the pipeline itself. So the data could be transformed and then stored in your favorable destination. So there are multiple activities here. The main activity that we're going to look at today is the copy data activity. So in this copy data activity, it's very simple. We have a source, we have a sink. The source is where we're going to pull the data from, and the sink is where it's going to go to. Now, when we want to configure the source, then we want to configure the sink, and then we're going to run the pipeline. That's all that's going to happen today. So in the source, first we need to create a new data set. So this is us telling ADF what kind of data am I looking to ingest, right? And from where am I going to pull it. As of now, this demo, for the purpose of this demo, I have created a storage container called desa123. So in this container already I have created a folder called data, where I have uploaded a simple CSV file containing some information. Now this is like the storage container in Azure. It's into this container you can push in files, you can push in tables, you can push in blobs, audio, video formats, anything that you want. So the goal is to load the data from this storage container into a SQL database. Now the SQL database is also something that I have pre-created for the purpose of this demo. Yeah, so this is the server and this is the database. Right, so we have a database here already. Let me log into the database. The goal is to load the data from this storage container into a table format inside my SQL database. It's logging in, let it log in. In the meantime, let's go back to Azure portal. Right, so we're configuring sink. We're first going to select the storage container, which is our source. Now that resides in data lake. It's the Azure Data Lake Storage Gen 2. So I So this, and what am I connecting to? I am trying to load a CSV file. So these are the different file formats supported in Gentoo today. We are going to be copying a CSV file. So let me select delimited text, and I need to make a connection to my storage account. So how? So the data set is what are we connecting to? We are connecting to a CSV file present in ADLS. And how do I connect? We need to set up a connection between the Azure Data Factory and the storage account, right? The Azure Data Factory is a separate service in Azure. This is a separate service. The storage container is a separate service. Now, in order to establish a connection between the data factory and the storage container, I need to create something called as a linked service. So this is how I connect. So in order to create a link service, let me select new, and it's going to ask me, what do you want to connect to? So from my Azure subscription, this is my subscription. This is the name of my storage account. If you see here, it's DESA123. So I'm saying that this is my storage account. I'm going to test my connection. It's going to verify if the data factory is able to connect to the storage container, and I'm going to say create. This is the name of my linked service that I have given, a Azure Data Lake Storage 2. Now here, now from Azure Data Factory, I can, since the connection is successful, I can browse through this container. So we had created a folder called data. Let me also create another container like test, right? Okay, it doesn't allow uppercase. Yeah, I have two folders now, data and test. So we should be able to browse through, since the connection is successful from ADF, we should be able to browse the, now if you can see here, we can see two folders, and I want to load this file, this CSV file into my SQL database. So that is the source configuration we have done. So now the source data set, what you see over here, is what am I connecting to? The data lake storage, and how am I connecting via the linked service, which connection was successful. Next is we define the sink. Where does this data need to be loaded into? So what is the sink? The sink is a SQL database. Let me see if the login was successful. Okay, looks like the server is down. Let me check that. The server is available and running. Is online. Query editor. Let me open a new tab. Hiccups of a demo. SQL database. Okay, let me see if I'm able to connect to it from the, so yeah, let's go back to the sink here. Let me see if I'm able to connect here. I'm going to create a new connection. So this is the new linked service, is how we are linking. What is the connection? So if you come here, you select the Azure subscription, and we have the server name and we have the database name. It's going to be via SQL authentication, which is admin, Agnes, password. This was my password. Yeah. So now this is the link service which is set up now, and we are going to create the table. Yep, so the sink is configured and the source is configured. Let me show it to you. Okay. So if you see here in this database, we have a table called dbo.census-data. Let me query the table. Okay, so this is it's an empty table that I've just created. It doesn't have any data inside it. Now we have configured the source. The source is a CSV file. We have configured the sink, which is a SQL table. And from the source, if we want to preview the data, that is also possible. Like if I could import the schemas here, and it would show me what are the um, columns which are present. So if I say preview source, right, this is the CSV. So this is giving us a glimpse of the file present. It's not yet copied. It's just giving us a glimpse of the file and the contents of the file. So if you see here, we have code, birthplace and resident population count. And we're going to push the data into a table, and that table also has the following columns, but let me show it to you. Yeah, code, birthplace and the resident population count. So let me now debug this. The debug means we're doing a test run of the pipeline. So what you see here on the output is the status of the pipeline. Since it's already running right now, the pipeline status is in progress and copy data is right now queued because it's pulling up compute resources to do the copy. So if you see here, we have a screen which tells us the status of our copy activity. So it has read 8.278 rows to be precise, and it has written 278 rows. It has copied data from the storage into the Azure SQL database, and this is the details of the compute, or how much power was used in order to copy this and what is the duration of the copy. So now the status is succeeded. Let's go to our table and let's run this query now. So if you can see, we can see that some rows have been copied into this table. Let me do a count star. So this will give me how many rows have been copied. So we can see here the 278, and even if you come here and see, this was the data that was shared, right? 278 rows are present in the file and 278 rows have been written. Now what happens when I run it again? What do we expect to see? We expect to see the same file being loaded once again into the table. In that case, the count should potentially increase. It is running, it's spinning up the cluster at the background uh, for the compute energy needed to pull the data. This is again successful. Now let's go back to our server. Yeah. Now the count is 556, which means the 278 rows as part of the first run and 556 as part, again 278 rows added, so it's 556 in total in the table now. Now if I want, so what we're going to try and do here is to truncate the table. Is that the table name? It is dbo.census. Let me copy this as it is. So we could write transformation scripts, we could write pre-copy scripts. So what essentially a pre-copy script means is, this script will be first run in the SQL database before pushing the data into the Azure SQL database. So that should make the count, as of now the count is still 556. That should truncate the table, which is make it 0, and then do a fresh load. So let me run this again. The mapping is resident population count. Let's wait. It has succeeded. Now let's run the count. It is back to 278, which means the table was truncated. The original 556 records were deleted, and then a fresh load of 278 rows have happened, right? So yes, and then moving on. So this is a quick demo of what can be easily done via UI. We do not have to write a single line of code. It's a couple of UI steps, and you already have a pipeline running. Now if you want to set up a schedule, you could do that. You could just trigger now here to trigger the pipeline, or if you want to create a trigger is when you want to schedule a job. So if I want to say, like for example, it starts today, and I want to run this pipeline once every day or twice every day, I could do that, right? And I want to do it at 6 a.m. every day. So start trigger on creation. So once you give OK, and what happens is there is a trigger now associated called trigger 1 with this pipeline, and that trigger will take care of scheduling this copy activity every day for us. And here in the sync as well, right, we could decide if it's going to copy the same file, or if the file has changed, someone is loading a new file. You could decide if the write should be an insert, or it should be an update, an insert and an update. So the records, so the delta logic is internally taken care of by Azure Data Factory itself, which saves us from writing a lot of code. You could just push the data as it is every single time, or you could do a merge. What that means is if 2 or 3 rows have changed from all the 278 rows, only those 2-3 rows would be updated. It would not do a full load of 278 rows, which essentially means you save a lot on the compute. You save a lot on the cost of the pipeline. Yeah, so this is at the high level what the Azure Data Factory, what a simple pipeline looks like. The monitor screen lets you know how many pipelines have been run in the last 24 hours, whether I have not triggered a pipeline because I have not set up anything. But if you see on the debug tab, these are the list of the number of times we have run the pipeline. And manage helps you understand what are the linked services that you created, what are the data sets you have created, what are the triggers you have created, and a lot more. So hopefully I believe we have covered at least one major section of the demo. Going back to my PPT. Yeah, so creating, configuring a pipeline, the source and sink configuration, linked services setup. This is what we have covered. Parameterization and monitoring is very simple. It just means using Azure Data Factory to monitor your pipelines, right? So we can monitor if something was scheduled, we can check if it was scheduled and if it was failed. And for a pipeline, you can also set multiple parameters. Like for the pipeline, when it is triggered, if you want to change the source, for example, we could create one copy activity, but if the file names could be different at different times of the day. Assume I want to load a CSV in the morning and load another JSON file in the evening. How does the pipeline know which file to pick and at what time? So that is how we use parameters. So the parameter is a pipeline variable. It is something that you define. You give a name, string, and a value. And in the copy activity, we need to specify that if it is a JSON file, pick up this name, and if it is a CSV file, pick up the other name. So at that level, you can make the same pipeline dynamic. You don't need to create a pipeline separately for handling CSV files and a pipeline separately for handling JSON files. So Azure Data Factory, the pipelines can be made very dynamic, and parameterization is mighty useful there. Yeah, so SQL Essentials, I do not know if we have the time, but what that essentially means is we could use a lot of SQL in ADF to perform transformations on the go, to perform selection of data. Assume a CSV file has hundreds of rows, and for my requirement, I only need 27 rows. In copy data activity, using the mapping section, I can filter out what I need. Even in this file, right, this file totally has around, let me show this file to you. I have it somewhere here. Okay, I think demo, yes. this CSV has a total of 4 columns, but we have been pulling data only for 3 columns. So even at that level, at the column level, you can do a lot of filtering and a lot of SQL support. Thank you for your time.